Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Spouse Angle. It's time for our monthly feature episode, and I hope you're ready to laugh today because my guest is New Jersey based stand up comedian and actor Ashley Gutermuth. Ashley won the headliner category of the U.S. Comedy Contest in 2021 and has performed for the World Series of Comedy and multiple comedy festivals. She has also appeared on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, which I'm a fan of, and she was chosen there to win the Seinfeld Challenge. Jerry Seinfeld himself tweeted that Ashley did his bit talk show host better than he ever did. So that's certainly high praise for Ashley there. She is also a military spouse, which of course is what brings her here to this podcast today. She often posts hilarious videos about military life on social media. So if you don't already follow her, you're going to want to check her out at Ash Gutermuth. Ashley, thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. And you nailed my last name. Perfect.
Good. I was a little worried because there's on your website, it says like, it's okay. I don't know how to pronounce it either.
It's hard. It's too much. I'm changing it to Smith. It's fine.
Awesome. Well, you're a comedian of so many accomplishments. I know I've only just scratched the surface of that, but let's first talk about your military connection and what military life has been like for you so far.
Okay, sure. My husband, he is in the Air Force. He's a full-time reservist, so goes to work every day, wears the uniform every day, kind of deal. And we, even though he's in the reserves, we still move like every 2 years. We're still kind of on that tempo. So right now I'm in New Jersey. I live on the Air Force Base in New Jersey. But before that, we've been in Delaware and Washington and Pennsylvania and Georgia and Washington, D.C. and Washington State. So we got around.
Yeah. How long have you been a military spouse?
Years. Let's see. Well, I guess less than 10 years, right? However long I've been married. Who keeps track of that?
Fair, very fair.
I don't know about you. Do you celebrate anniversaries and things like that?
Well, interestingly, my son was born on our anniversary, so it's kind of
Ooh.
just an all day of celebration for everything.
Stealing the spotlight. That's what the kids do. No, I find that because I do all my military video postings, and sometimes I'll post about holidays like Valentine's Day, and how they're never home. They're usually your husband, their wife is usually deployed, or they're TDY, or they're somewhere. And I got so many responses of people that said, yeah, we don't celebrate anything. And it finally hit me why my husband and I, we don't celebrate birthdays. We don't celebrate really any holidays. And I think it's like a coping mechanism. It's like, oh, it's not like you're away anyway all the time. So we got to
Yeah,
figure, we just don't.
yeah, that's fair. Well, here's a question I'm sure you get asked a lot, but I'm just really curious how you got into comedy. Is it something that you always wanted to do, or did you just kind of hear people saying, "Hey, Ashley, you're freaking hilarious. Like you should do this," or like how did it all start for you?
Yes, always loved comedy. Completely obsessed from when I was very young. So both my parents, they were both helicopter mechanics. So they would work at the same place. That's kind of an unusual job anyway, and then to have them both do it is also unusual. But they would get called out to fix a broken down helicopter in the middle of the night, and I would go to work with them. And so we would drive an hour to the airport and listen to tapes, CDs of comedy albums like Monty Python, a lot of British comedy. So I have more knowledge about British comedy than I do American comedy, actually, which is because I've always been obsessed with that. So yes, completely. And I've always been a ham. I've always been somebody that is happy to get up in front of people, and also didn't have any real idea how I could be a comedian in some way. But I'll tell you what, I tried other jobs, and I just caused trouble. 100%. Just I have not, honest to goodness, had a job where I haven't tried to arm wrestle my boss, and that you can't do that. I don't know why I need to establish dominance early on. I don't know what it is, but I've definitely had a lot of jobs, but um, the comedy piece is the one that I like the most, and that's definitely my going forward. But yeah, I when I was 17, I started doing Toastmasters. I used to sneak into Toastmasters classes and do stand up routines. So it's definitely something I've always been obsessed with.
Okay. And you talked about moving a lot. moving around a lot because of the military lifestyle. Have you been able to kind of pick up your comedy career and, kind of get noticed in the new places where you go, or how has that been for you?
Well, one of the main reasons why we live in New Jersey now is because it's near New York City, and New York City or Los Angeles. Those are sort of the main places that you want to be if you're a comedian. Lots of comedy happens there. I've done comedy in Seattle when we lived out there, Tacoma, Seattle area. Um, so it's easier now because so much stuff is on Zoom. So I am a what's no I normally do a lot of clean comedy, so I don't swear. Like, even in my videos, I don't really swear. I don't really talk about any like sexual things like that. And that's not that I think there's anything wrong with it, it's just that I'm really repressed, so I don't talk about it. And it just doesn't come out of me. um, but because of Zoom and because of all these virtual platforms, so many people are connected all around the world. So I've been able to do shows for people in South Africa and Ireland and India, and I do a lot of shows for companies. So big, Amazon, Apple, all those companies, they hire comedians virtually to come in and have a little comedy show for their employees while they're working from home. And so that's usually what I do every day during the day. If I'm not making ridiculous videos, I am doing some sort of comedy show for a company. And that's lots of fun.
Wow. So it really is a career. You're making a living out of it. And that's, I
Yeah.
would say, probably unusual, right?
It's
Is that fair?
it's it's definitely
It's not a job you
um
hear about a lot.
right. Well, it you know what? It is something, it's really hard. It is because you have to be able to, it sounds ridiculous because people are like, "Oh, well, you just go and goof around." You In order to get anywhere, you have to write every day. You have to, and there's so much rejection, and there's also so much like the things that people, even with my videos that I post, if you read the comments before I'm able to either delete them or do something funny with them, you will see horrific people come out that just say disgusting things like over and over again. Especially if a video's gone viral in some way, it just gets horrendous. But in person, that kind of stuff can happen too. Somebody the other day just smacked me in the head, and I thought it was somebody that knew me, and I was like, I have no idea who you are. But I think it's somebody that just knew me off the internet, and they were just like, bam. What is this? But I've had people touch me unnecessarily. I've had people shout vulgarities at me while I'm doing set. It's something that you just have to really want to do because there's so much to it, and there's so much traveling too. You're constantly driving from one place to another. I have a traumatic brain injury because I was coming back from a stand-up show, and a guy was doing over 100 and hit me on the highway out in Washington State and spun my car around 3 times. And that was just when the pandemic was starting, and my husband had just deployed for 7 months. So it was like all the things had
Oh,
combined.
Ashley. Oh my
It was
gosh.
horrific. So even now, I don't like, I have memory problems, and I've got my body's all jacked up from it. But uh, the good thing about comedy is when something bad happens to you, you get to turn it into something good. It can be something funny. So that's what I like about it.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that. Kind of goes to my next question. I was curious, like, what's your process for writing a joke or a bit? And I guess we can use like military life as an example, but I'm curious, like, if you go looking for content or if the content comes to you. And I know there's, like you said, stuff happens and you have to turn it into something you can joke about. But I'm curious what that process is like for you.
So it is constant. One of the things about comedy is you do not want to ever think to yourself, I'll remember that. So for example, if something funny happens to you, or you just hear somebody say a funny phrase, you have to write it down within the next 15 seconds. Otherwise, you will not remember it. You will think to yourself, I will, it'll be fine. You never will. And then that's gone forever. And that could be a good 30-second bit where you get a good laugh. So you have to write everything down. That's part of it.
Do you have a
And it's
notebook with you, like at all times,
I
or?
use my phone. I also have an Apple Watch, and I have a little recorder on my Apple Watch, and I just say whatever it was in.
Oh, that's funny.
into that. So if I just hear like a funny phrase or somebody just something silly happened, and that can spark into something else. So that's good to have that sort of like backlog of, okay, I want to go write about this, and let me like build upon it. And then as you're performing, depending on how comfortable you are in um, uh, in that moment on stage, you'll come out with cool stuff. Sometimes your brain will just go, "Hey, this will be funny," and it comes out and it is really funny and it works really well. Now, sometimes it doesn't continue to work. It only works in that one arena. That's why comedy
So you're
is
just like
so
ad-libbing?
you can't. Yeah, I mean, and people do that a lot, but it. Sometimes you'll have a bit that you did this one way for a year and it always worked, and then you just suddenly saw a different angle and started adding more to it.
Oh,
So
interesting.
that's really like a fun, magical part of comedy when it's all really working and you can get people going, and play with the audience because it's a conversation. It's as opposed to like a monologue.
Yeah.
But yeah, you it's one of the reasons why it's so difficult, because you have to be organized enough to write things down when you hear them, or have a tremendous memory, and then keep know when something is working, and then keep chiseling away at it, because it's not you have to keep going and keep working at it. It's almost like something's never done.
Yeah.
It just keeps going.
I kind of feel your pain a little bit because as a journalist, like especially when I write like feature stories, you want to like write a lead that really hooks people. And
Hmm.
so sometimes it will take me forever to like really work on that. And I've been laying in bed and like I've been laying in bed at 3 in the morning. I'm like, oh, it came to me. I have to write it down. I did that so much. My husband thinks it's hilarious. Or like I'll speak it into my phone and like a
Hmm.
note. And then sometimes I'll get to the next day. I'm like, that was terrible. Why did I why did I why did
Oh
that keep
yeah.
me up at night? Right. But
Which is
other times it's like
nonsense.
that's my lead and it comes to you at like the most random times. But I feel
Yeah.
your pain a little bit on that.
There's a British comedian who's really good. His name's Gary Delaney, and I always read whenever he posts advice. I always read it because his main thing is that he worked really, really hard. He says people were more talented than I am. Absolutely, I just outworked them, and that's something I try to do. I try to outwork everybody as much as I possibly can.
Mm.
Um, but he says that the more well rested you are, the more you write, and the more well rested you are, the more the special magical ideas will come to you, which I like that
Yeah, I like
idea.
that. So your videos, at least the ones that that I've seen, are mostly have to do with like military life, and you've racked up like tons and tons of followers on social media and TikTok and things like that. Like you were saying, the response maybe isn't always great. Some of them are a little bit edgy-ish, which I like. But how did you kind of find that to be your niche, or like how did those get started?
um I'm trying to think what one of the first ones were. I just started thinking, okay, well, what would be funny about this, and then to saw what got picked up, and then it got shared to another group, because I also talk about hoarding, growing up with hoarders, and that kind of idea, which actually that those posts got shared to like groups that have meetings and like therapy, shared to therapy groups, which made me nervous because I was like, oh, I don't want to post something that like ends up if they're
Mm.
using this as like a teaching tool. I should not be in that discussion. um but yeah, I just started trying to do really quick uh thoughts about things that I thought would be would be funny. Just the idea. One of my first ones was the military spouse paycheck. And it's because I think I saw somebody ask that. And there is some genuine misconception that military spouses are given an actual paycheck. And then some people usually try to like jump in and say, "Oh, it's BAH. That's how it works." But it's people literally are told you will receive a wife paycheck, and
Mm.
you're just like, okay, well, let's just see if we can, ride that wave of silliness.
You had one the other day that was like, what do I do if my boyfriend wants to see other people in basic training?
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Can you say that one?
My boyfriend says that he wants to date other people while he's in basic training. Um, I don't agree with this. What should I do? And my advice to her, which was, I think, solid advice: your boyfriend wants to date somebody while he's in basic training. Okay, he's going to be gone for however many weeks. What you need to do is just go take his dad out to TGI Fridays, split some potato skins and see what happens. And, maybe if you're lucky, by the time basic training graduation rolls around, you can go in as his new stepmom. And I think that's a good advice. I think that's solid advice. Oh my goodness, people get so mad about that video. And they're just like, he first of all, he will not have time to date in basic training. Are you kidding me? He won't even have time to do anything at all. And then you get the other side where they're calling me disgusting because they're like, this is the advice you give out to new military spouses? How dare you lead them down this path? And you're like, what, on what planet do you think that this would work out? Like, if it did work out, if this woman did just decide to date this guy's dad and then go as his stepmom, I would give her a trophy because that is impressive to get that done in like 12 weeks.
Well, and it's a joke, people.
Right. Exactly. A lot of my things are based on irony. You have to kind of really understand that I don't mean what I'm saying. And that is very difficult for a lot of people to see. And also there's a certain amount of, most of the time, the people that say mean things to me or leave mean comments are men. And I don't like to be that person that's like, oh, this is one group that this happens. But genuinely, it's I very, very rarely will hear anything from a woman. I could probably say it's less than 5, and I get hundreds of nasty comments from men every day, and like private messages where they're threatening me and things like that, like full on. And so I have to do a lot of reporting and blocking. But it's just, there's a certain amount of I'm getting attention. And when they see me getting attention, they try to find some way to attack it because they're like, well, why aren't they paying attention to me? You're like, well, maybe spend several hours every day creating things. And then hopefully at some point somebody will like it months down the road.
Instead of trolling people online.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's too bad. That I feel like that does happen a lot. And yeah, I don't get it so much anymore. But when I was in a newsroom, it was like the comment section was just always filthy. So,
Well, you need a fake assistant. That's what I do, Dominic. You create a fake assistant and you have to make sure that your fake assistant responds in a way that the commenters, I make sure Dominic misunderstands. So if somebody is like, oh, I hate you so much, how dare you, you're ugly, look at your hair, you're such a man, that's a common one, right? Dominic will chime in and Dominic will say, thank you so much for your support, we really appreciate and love you, thank you for your question, Ashley will get back to you soon. So he just fundamentally misunderstands what they say, and then they usually come back and they're mad again, and then I ignore, but all they've done is push my video up in the algorithm. So I don't really care, they're all helping me, but it's just fun to play with. One of my issues though is that especially TikTok does this. They will they'll ban me before they'll ban a nasty commenter. So they can just make my whole thing disappear, which is not really fair. And the way that the robots and the computers work, where they just scan for certain words, and it's all totally out of context. It makes things difficult because you can't really fight back, because as soon as you fight back, then you get reported and then your whole account gets taken down.
so what's the dream for you? Where would you like to take comedy? And I know you do some acting as well. So where would you like to take it all?
Everything, anything and everything. Overall, I like to use comedy to try to be able to help in some way. So hopefully I can start doing, I can do bigger shows in clubs and string a tour together near military bases, and then maybe we can raise money for something, or we can raise awareness for something. I want to do a like USO tour or an Armed Forces Entertainment tour. I also, acting wise, I would like to play a supervillain in a movie, and I'm just going to put that out there. I think I'd be a good supervillain. I've got a good straight face, I can people always ask me, how do you make these videos without laughing? And you're like, you just buckle down, just stare into the camera.
So it's not even multiple takes, you're just that good.
Sometimes it depends. Sometimes I'll make myself laugh because I'm just like, this is so ridiculous. Like I did one yesterday. Okay, so I went to the thrift store on base. They have a shirt from Desert Storm, a sweatshirt that I've been wearing, and it makes me laugh really hard. Just the idea of this. It's just got a giant eagle on it, and I so I've been doing some videos with that. And my video yesterday was um you aren't you patriotic? I'm patriotic. You know what the most patriotic thing you can do is vote. I always vote. Last election voted 6 times. And and so you're just doing stuff like that, stuff that you see people spout out with all,
Right.
and that it's what's funny is you get people in the comments that then they have some agenda or they think that I'm like aligned with them politically, and I'm like, I'm probably not. So it's funny, the silly things that we do.
Yeah. What kind of acting do you do?
Well, a lot of auditions. Yeah, so there's a lot of neat stuff in New York and things like that. But I do voiceover acting, so I've gotten to do some of that for the military, which has been pretty cool. But I definitely don't do as much acting and voice acting as I would like to. So if anybody's got anything, send it my way. Happy to audition.
Awesome, Ashley. Well, I know I kind of mentioned at the top, but where can people find you and how can they connect with you?
So I am everywhere. I'm even on Pinterest, for heaven's sakes, which is one of the places where I get the most abuse. And for some reason, 40-year-old women, they don't like me. No, I am on Pinterest. So I post things everywhere as at Ash Gutermuth. And there's actually there's one other Ashley Gutermuth in the world. But if you send her a message, she'll type in all caps, I am not a comedian.
Really?
Yeah. So
So she's gotten messaged a couple times, it would seem.
She's not on board. She's not on board. But yeah, everywhere I'm at Ash Gutermuth. Also my website, ashleygutermuth.com. But it seems like, people will recognize me in public now, which is fun. So it seems like all the social media stuff is working. So I hope I get to see everyone in person at a show soon.
Well, yeah, I mean, you were on the Jimmy Fallon, right? They played your video, so
Mm-hmm.
that's big
Yeah,
time.
that was super cool, super
Yeah.
neat. They were all so nice to me. Jerry Seinfeld sent me his book and wrote, Ashley, you're so funny in it. And so it's really cool.
Yeah. Awesome, Ashley. Well, I've really enjoyed talking to you. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast, and I wish nothing but the best for you in your career.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.